The soup was still warm when the silence finally settled. One spoon sat on the table, untouched. The other lay in the sink like it had been dropped in a hurry. Her napkin was folded too perfectly. She hadn't even used it. The glass of wine I poured for her had one fingerprint on it, and it wasn't mine. I stared at that glass for maybe an hour. At 6:40 p.m., she said she'd be back by 9 o'clock. At 9 p.m., I opened all the windows. At 12:17 a.m., I stopped waiting. There was nothing dramatic about it. No shouting, no broken plates, no slammed doors. She simply stood up, checked her phone, mumbled something about a team event, and walked out in heels I'd never seen before. She didn't kiss my cheek. She didn't even look at me when she left. Just grabbed her silver clutch and was gone.
Ow.
Candles kept burning, the porch light stayed on, and I sat there like a hotel guest who didn't realize checkout time had come and gone. At 10:08 a.m., I opened her laptop. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because I needed answers, maybe because my hands wanted to feel useful, or maybe because her password hadn't changed in 5 years, and part of me always knew one day I'd type it in with shaking fingers. Inside was a folder called Archive. Inside the folder were videos. Some were office birthday parties, others were her speaking at conferences. But one, dated 2 weeks ago, wasn't like the rest. I clicked it. What I heard first wasn't her voice. It was laughter deep, male, confident. Then, he still has no idea. Her voice, he still thinks I'm working late. More laughter. Bottle popping. Something thudding against what sounded like a couch cushion, and then silence. But not like mine. This silence had breath in it, shaky, fast, messy breath. A dress rustling, fingers fumbling with something. I didn't watch the rest. I closed the laptop slowly, like it was made of glass. My hands didn't feel like mine anymore. At 2:03 a.m., I checked the front door. Still locked. No footsteps. No keys turning. I walked to the table and poured her wine down the drain. Then I sat back down at the table in front of that perfect napkin and whispered the last thing I said to her before she left. I asked you to stay. At 3:12 a.m., I noticed the guest bathroom door was locked. That's strange, right? We never use. It's the smallest room in the house, barely large enough for a mirror and a cabinet. We keep extra hand towels in there, scented candles, a half-full bottle of mouthwash from 2 Christmases ago. I walked over slowly, unsure what I was expecting to find. Maybe some part of her she left behind that could explain anything. I jiggled the handle like that would solve something. Still locked. I could feel the weight of the house then, the way. It suddenly felt too big and too quiet. Her perfume still clung to the hallway like a lie that hadn't yet cleared out. Everything was just as it should be, but nothing felt real. I checked the bedroom again. The bed was untouched, her pillow still fluffed the way she liked it. With that slight indent from her wrist, where she always curled into sleep. But she wasn't coming back to it tonight, maybe not tomorrow either. I went outside, barefoot, not thinking, just moving. The cold concrete bit at my feet. The street was dead silent. No cars, no wind, just the hum of the distant traffic lights changing for no one. Her car was gone, of course. It had been gone since she left. But something else caught my eye. Something small, a strip of red plastic. On the driveway, I picked it up and turned it in my fingers. It was a wristband, one of those VIP-only ones they give you at invite-only venues. A metallic red with gold lettering that read Havley Private. I froze. That was her boss's last name. The one she claimed to despise. The one she rolled her eyes about when she came home drained. Alan's impossible. Alan's overbearing. Alan thinks he's Don Draper, but she went to his party, his private party. I didn't even know he threw parties. I put the wristband on. The kitchen counter, next to the soup. The wine bottle had already gone warm. The silence in the house felt layered now, not just quiet, but empty. Stripped, like she took the oxygen with her. I opened the fridge and saw the 2 bowls of soup I had placed there earlier. One still covered with plastic wrap, the other already congealed. She didn't eat, didn't even pretend to. That's when I did something I shouldn't have. Went into her home office. She always told me not to, said it was her thinking space, but she didn't put a lock on the door. I stepped in and looked around. Everything was too neat. Her notepad lay open, filled with notes about a campaign called Velvet. Thursday. I didn't know what that meant, but one page was different. One page just had a name on it, B, written in a slanted, softer hand. Below it, a time, 8:45. Below that, he doesn't suspect. I stared at it for a long time, and then I noticed her phone charger was still plugged in, but her phone wasn't. There, she always takes her phone everywhere, which means she didn't forget it, which means she wanted it gone. At 6:12 a.m., I heard her phone ringing. I hadn't noticed it before. It must have been buried under something, muffled. The sound was thin, metallic, the kind of ring that felt out of place in a room as still as this one. I followed the noise like a thread, past the kitchen, through the laundry room, into the garage. And there it was, her phone, sitting face down on the passenger seat of my car. It's not hers. Mine. I stared at it for several seconds before opening. The door, the screen lit up with the name Julian H. I didn't recognize it. Not a family member, not a coworker she'd ever mentioned, just a clean, mysterious name on a device she shouldn't have left behind. I let it ring. I didn't answer. When it stopped, I picked it up and turned it over. The home screen was locked. But the wallpaper wasn't. It wasn't the usual picture of us at Lake Geneva. It was a black and white photo of a man's hand on a steering wheel. Not mine, not hers. Just a hand, relaxed, confident, like it belonged somewhere important. Then the text messages started appearing. One after another, like they'd been waiting for daylight to show up. Julian H. Last night was insane. You still? At Alan's, Julian H. You're not ghosting me now, right? Julian H. Rowan, come on. I left the bracelet with your coat. Julian H. Don't do this again. I didn't know what to make of it. I just stood there in the garage with the early morning, light bleeding through the window, and that voice in my head repeating over and over, you asked her to stay. You asked her to stay. I brought the phone back inside. My hand was shaking now. Not in anger, it wasn't that kind of story. It was something else, like my body couldn't decide whether it still belonged in this house. I set the phone next to the wine glass, next to the event wristband, like I was building some kind of altar to my own humiliation. Then a sound, not the phone this time. A soft creak from upstairs. I didn't move at first. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe sleep deprivation was finally chewing at my edges. But then it came again, unmistakable. A slow, deliberate step on the upstairs landing. I walked to the bottom of the staircase and looked up. Nothing, but the air felt different. I climbed the stairs slowly, not even breathing, ears straining to hear anything besides the pounding in my chest. The hallway was dim, morning light crawling in through the guest room blinds. The master bedroom was still empty. But the guest room door, the same door I hadn't opened in months, was now slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and I froze. The suitcase hers, the gray one with the dent on the corner from our trip to Nashville, was on the bed, zipped halfway open, clothes folded, some expensive, some wrinkled, like they were shoved in last minute. And next to the suitcase, a man's jacket. Not mine, not Julian's either. I recognized the monogram on the sleeve. It was H. Allen Havley, her boss, her impossible boss, the one she claimed she couldn't stand. The one she said didn't respect boundaries. The one she told me I was paranoid about. That's when the front door slammed downstairs, and her voice, called up, cheerful, oblivious, like none of this ever happened. Hey, babe, you up? I didn't answer her. I stood at the top of the stairs, just outside the guest room, barely breathing. Her suitcase still open, Allen Havley's jacket still draped across our guest bed like it belonged there. She was downstairs. Cheerful, humming a tune I couldn't place, like she had just come back from grabbing coffee, not vanishing for 3 days. I could hear her heels clicking across the tile, the soft rustle of a grocery bag, the fridge door opening. She was talking to herself now, something about oat milk, asking if we were out of cereal, laughing under her breath like she had the luxury of comfort. Like her disappearing act hadn't turned this house into a grave. My hand gripped the banister. Tighter, she called out again, louder. Curtis, you awake? You won't believe the weekend I've had. I slowly stepped back into the guest room, and closed the door behind me. Not hard, just enough, like I needed one last second of quiet before everything shattered. I looked at her suitcase again. Half her clothes were missing. There were receipts crumpled in the side pocket, one from a steakhouse in Lake Forest, one from a gas station 2 hours outside the city. The name Alan Havley showed up again on the dinner receipt in the signature line, scribbled quickly, casually. This wasn't business. This wasn't a spontaneous work trip. This was planned. I walked into the bathroom and splashed water on my face, but it didn't do anything. I still looked like someone who had been kept out of the loop in his own life. My reflection didn't even flinch. It just stared back, hollowed, tired, and slightly embarrassed. I didn't feel angry, not yet. I felt behind, like the version of me that believed her was a step or two slower than the one that was waking up now. The sound of her coming up the stairs pulled me back to the present. Each step creaked, like it was giving away a secret. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway just as she reached the top landing. Her eyes met mine, and for the briefest second, she hesitated, not in guilt but surprise. Like she wasn't expecting to see me standing alert, unshaven, wearing yesterday's clothes, and no expression at all. "Hey," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I tried texting you, but my phone died." You know how Alan's parties get. I didn't say a word. I just watched her closely. She had no purse, no coat, no phone. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head, feigning concern. I stepped aside and gestured toward the guest room without breaking eye contact. "What's this?" asked, walking past me. She saw the suitcase. She saw the jacket, and for the first time her face cracked. Not much, just the slightest shift. Her jaw tensed. Her eyes blinked faster. She didn't touch anything. She just stood there, calculating. "That's not mine," she said. I almost laughed. It wasn't humor. It was the kind of laugh you feel in your throat when you're about to break. I reached into the pocket of my hoodie and pulled out the event wristband I'd found in the driveway. Then her phone. Then the note with B, 8:45. He doesn't suspect. I laid them out on the bed like evidence in a trial I never wanted to attend. She didn't touch any of it. "Curtis," she finally said slowly, her voice tightening. "We're reading too much into things. You're spinning again." Again, that word did something to me. I looked at her, really looked and saw it. Not regret, not panic, but strategy. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to see how much I knew, and, more importantly, how much I was willing to ignore. She sat down on the edge of the guest bed like nothing was burning. I stood across from her in the doorway. The room hadn't changed, the same white curtains. Same picture frames on the wall we never bothered updating, but the air inside felt charged. It's like static before a lightning strike. She crossed her legs, slow and deliberate, like she was in control, like I was the one acting irrational. "Let's talk," she said. No apology, no admission, just that calm, exhausted voice people use when they've already rehearsed their lines. "Talk?" I repeated, my voice dry now. "You want to talk?" She didn't answer directly. She looked down at the jacket, his jacket, then to the wristband, then her phone, still dark and locked. Her silence was louder than anything else in that moment. "You've been gone for 3 days, Rowan," I said, finally walking into the room. "No texts, no calls. You missed my birthday. You came home without your phone, and I find this." I gestured at the suitcase. "You live 2 separate lives, and I'm just the one with the better mortgage." She winced at that, but only briefly. "I didn't mean to hurt you." That sentence, that shallow, pointless sentence. I felt something twist in my chest, not anger exactly, but recognition, like I was seeing a performance I'd watched too many times before, and suddenly it didn't land. "I know what this is," I said. "I think I've known longer than I let myself believe." She watched me carefully, like she wasn't sure what version of me she was dealing with. Maybe she thought I'd cry. Maybe she hoped I'd yell. But I didn't do either. I just sat across from her in the chair near the closet, the one she used when she painted her toenails while listening to podcasts. "Who is Julian?" I asked quietly. That one landed. She flinched, then recovered. "A friend," she said. "He was at the party." I nodded slowly. "The one texting you that he left his bracelet in your coat?" The one you ghosted after whatever happened? She shifted her weight. You went through my messages? You left your phone in my car? I said. I didn't go looking for anything. It was all waiting for me. She sighed and glanced out the window like she wanted to escape this conversation by staring hard enough at the trees. I just needed space, she said. That's all. I felt a sudden quiet fury at that. So you disappeared into your boss's private party, slept God knows where, took someone else's coat, let a man send you 5 messages calling you by your first name like he's your husband, and your answer is space? She blinked fast, her voice rising for the first time. You don't get to twist this. You've been distant for months. You act like I'm invisible. I come home and you don't even look up from your stupid library journals that cut deeper than it should have. So you punish me by vanishing. I didn't punish you, she snapped. I made a choice. There it was. Not guilt, not even defiance. Indifference. I stood slowly, feeling like my body weighed double what it did yesterday. The floorboards creaked beneath me and she watched every step like I was some wounded animal she was afraid might bite. What? Did you choose, Rowan? She didn't answer. Not right away. Her hands folded in her lap like a student who knew the teacher was right, but didn't care enough to admit it. Finally, she said, to stop pretending. And that landed harder than anything else. I nodded. No more words, no accusations, no grand speeches. I walked out of the room and closed the door behind me. She didn't follow. I slept in my car that night. Not because I was angry, I wasn't. Not in the way people imagine anger. It was quieter than that, stranger. I just couldn't bear to lie in the same bed where she'd once pulled my hand to her chest and whispered that she'd never let anything come between us. That bed felt like a crime scene now. So I climbed into the driver's seat, reclined it all the way back, wrapped myself in the flannel jacket I kept 4 emergency roadside kits, and listened to the house go dark behind me. The street was empty, just the soft buzz of a street lamp above, and the hollow thunk of my heart in my chest. The same chest she used to press her head against when she cried during movies, the same chest she turned her back on when she stopped, crying around me entirely. At some point, maybe around 3:30 in the morning, I noticed something strange. Her car had a shadow inside it. I sat up and stared. The shape was faint, just barely visible through the tinted glass. I unlocked my door quietly, walked across the driveway in my socks, and peeked through the windshield. A duffel bag. Black. Unzipped slightly, with something peeking out. Not clothes, not makeup. Envelopes. I opened the door and slid the bag out, holding my breath like it might explode. Inside were at least 20 handwritten letters, bundled in rubber bands, all addressed. 2R, none with stamps. Most were yellowed around the edges, like they'd been read and handled many times. One at the top was slightly newer. I opened it. Are you? Said the plan was in motion. Don't vanish again. I can't keep covering for you if you keep disappearing. He seems nice, but you're not being fair. Either finish it or don't. B. B again. The name from her notepad. And now, not a nickname, not a fantasy, a real person. Someone who knew about me. Someone who was involved. I looked through the rest, all in the same handwriting. Some kind, some urgent, a few desperate, and not one of them was from Alan, her boss. This wasn't about him. That had been a distraction, a decoy, the wine, the wristband, the Jackatol smoke. This was something older, deeper. I sat back on the curb with the bag in my lap, watching the first blue light of morning crawl over the rooftops. The back door of the house creaked open behind me. She stepped out in her robe, arms folded. No makeup, no polish, just Rowan as she used to be, except for the dead calm in her voice. I told you not to go through my things. I turned to her slowly. You kept every letter? She didn't respond. Is he the one who waited for you while I was planning anniversaries, while I was ironing your blouses before your interviews? I don't want to do this now, she said. When then? No answer. Just that stillness she wore like armor. I held up the most recent letter. Does he know you left this in your car? She stared at it, jaw tight. He's not your concern. Not yet. I said, But he knows my name. He knows our house. He knows me. And that makes it my concern. She walked down 2 steps, her voice low and raw now. He was there before you, Curtis. I blinked. What? I knew him before I ever met you, she said, eyes fixed on the sidewalk. I was supposed to end it. I didn't. And then it was too late. How long? I whispered. She looked up. Her eyes didn't flinch. Since the beginning. That sentence broke. Something in the air, like the house behind us, sagged under its weight. I nodded slowly, the kind of nod people give when their insides have turned to glass. And for the first time in our entire marriage, I realized that the lie didn't start last weekend, or at Alan's party, or even with Julian. It started on day 1. From the moment she touched my hand at that bookstore downtown and said, "You seem like the kind of man who listens." I did listen, for 6 years, and she'd never stopped whispering to someone else. I thought it ended that morning. I thought hearing her say it, that he had always been there, would be the last twist of the knife. But I was wrong. That wasn't the end. It wasn't even the deepest cut. I spent that whole day wandering the house, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Every item I touched felt like it had been picked out by someone else. I looked at the bookshelf we built together. I ran my hand over the engraved quote she asked me to etch above the mantel. Begin each day. With purpose. I remember carving those words into the wood while she made cocoa in the kitchen and hummed a Fleetwood Mac song. Like we were the kind of people who would grow old and soft and warm together. That memory felt poisonous now. That smile she gave me, I couldn't tell if it was ever real. I opened her emails next. I told myself it was to find closure, to finally understand. But deep down, I was looking for one sentence. One sentence where she admitted it. A confession, maybe? A sliver of remorse. Something that would let me believe she'd lost control. Not that she planned it from the beginning. What I found instead was something worse. It wasn't just be there with someone else. A name that hadn't come up before. Hannah Weiss. Dozens of messages. Not romantic, not even flirty, but strategic. Cold. Every subject line read like it belonged to a political campaign. Secured dinner. Reservation, client unaware, Curtis, still in the dark, timing not optimal, suggest after Q3 bonus. One message in particular stopped my breath mid-sentence. After he's out, you'll be clear. His name's not on the apartment. Havely agreed to hold it until then. If it goes well, I'll move the rest of your things after the firm signs off. We won't need the car anymore. Julian can list it in his name and transfer you off the insurance. After he's out, that's what I was. Not a husband, not even a mistake. I was an obstacle, a line item in someone else's blueprint. My chest went hollow. I closed the laptop. My hand hovered over it like I wasn't sure if I should destroy it or bury it. And I realized then none of it had been about love. Not mine, not hers. What I built was a quiet, patient life. A life that made her feel safe while she planned an escape, while she quietly handed the keys to my world over to people who had never shaken my hand. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling while the house creaked with the small, night-born sounds of something old and tired. I heard her moving upstairs, heard drawers open and close, heard footsteps on the wood floors of the master bedroom. Then silence. At 3:26 a.m., she came downstairs. She stood in the doorway like a shadow that had grown too familiar. "I need to talk to you," she said. I said nothing. She sat on the armrest of the opposite chair, hands folded tightly. She didn't look confident this time. She looked like someone who knew the door was closing and still hadn't figured out which direction she planned to run. "I know you hate me right now," she whispered. I didn't respond. "I'm not going to defend it," she continued. "But I need you to know something." I finally looked at her. "Why now?" "Because they weren't supposed to push," she said. "It got out of control. B wasn't supposed to get involved again. Alan was supposed to stay at a distance. Hannah's just someone who manages things, but this wasn't how I wanted it to happen." "Did you want it to happen?" I asked quietly, "while I was out renewing the tags on your car?" She looked away. "I was trying to wait for the right time, I swear. I thought maybe..." Maybe you wouldn't notice. That stunned me more than I expected. You thought I wouldn't notice you setting fire to everything we built? I said, You thought I'd go quietly? No, she whispered. I thought you'd still love me enough to let me go. She looked me dead in the eyes, and for the first time, I saw something different in her expression. Fear, not of me, but of being alone. Truly, finally alone. That's when I said it, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for it to cut. I already let you go. 3 days ago, you just didn't notice, and with that I stood up and walked to the front door. She didn't follow. She never asked me where I was going, because deep down, she already knew what came next. When I left that night, I didn't slam the door. I didn't pack a bag or make a speech. I didn't look back to see if she was crying or if she was texting someone. To come pick her up, I just closed the door behind me gently, like it was the last page in a chapter I'd been trapped inside for years. I didn't even know where I was going at first. I drove past the city, past the lake, past all the places where our memories used to live, restaurants with our initials scratched into wooden tables, bookstores where we'd whispered about which novels to fake read together, crosswalks where we kissed at red lights like the world was ours. It all felt smaller now, not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't define me anymore. I stopped at a diner just off the highway, the kind with scratched-up counters and black coffee that tastes like endings. The waitress didn't ask questions. She just poured me a cup and left me alone. I watched the steam rise, and for the first time in days, my breathing slowed. I was done mourning the version of her that never existed, and I was done mourning the version of me who let himself live in that illusion. It didn't happen all at once, but over the next few days I started sorting through the life I thought I'd lost. I found an old notebook I used to carry when I first started at the library, filled with quotes I scribbled in the margins during quiet shifts. One of them stuck out. It was underlined twice. You don't owe anyone your silence when your truth is asking to be heard. So I told mine. Not to her, not to B, not to Julian or Alan or Hannah, or any of the people who treated my life like a hotel they could check in and out of when it suited them. I told it to myself. I moved out of the house 2 weeks later, not dramatically. No lawyers, no headlines. I left her a list of what I'd taken, mostly clothes, books, some old photos that actually meant something. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want explanations. I wanted peace. And that's exactly what I found. I found it in the silence of a smaller apartment that didn't echo with absence. In the long walks I started taking through the old part of town, in the conversations I had with people who didn't know my history and didn't ask for a performance. I found it in a tiny used bookstore tucked between a flower shop and a barber shop, where I now volunteer 3 days a week, organizing donations and recommending poetry to people who don't think they need it. Sometimes I still think about her, not with rage, not even sadness, just distance. She was a storm that passed, loud, unpredictable, and unforgettable. But I survived it. I kept standing, and the sky unbelievably cleared. Last week I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just a single sheet of paper with one sentence. Written in handwriting I'll never forget. I thought I'd feel free. I don't. Folded the letter and slid it into the back of a drawer. I didn't reply, not out of cruelty, but because I didn't need to. Some people only learn what something meant once it's already gone, but I'm not one of them anymore.